This is the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series. 19 books. Over 4,000 pages. We've actually got a saying for these kind of situations. Zooey mama. I could not get enough of a series when I was a kid, and so couldn't anyone else around. Actually being able to find one of these in the library felt like a genuine accomplishment. I even remember it getting to a stage where my class had to have a form, like a spreadsheet, to keep track of whose turn it was of which Diary of a Wimpy Kid book. That's how popular they were. However, I had this thing, and you can't make fun of me, that when I read these books, I just kind of took them at face value. I didn't even see Greg as much of a wimpy kid. I just took him at his word and thought he was actually going to become famous, and that everything he did was justified. Basically, that means I've never appreciated this series for what it actually is. And also, Jeff kept writing these long after I grew out of him, so I have some catching up to do. Which is why in this video, I'm going to read every single one. I feel like when YouTubers normally start these kind of videos with this attitude of like, oh, can't believe I'm doing this. But I have to be honest with you, I'm kind of really excited. I feel like a kid again, like it's a beautiful day and I've got some new books to read at home. You can see the sunset behind me. Look how stunning that is. Great for the vibes, so I'm ready to read a book. Let's do it. Well. Oh. I just finished the first book. It took me just a little bit over an hour. And you know, I haven't actually finished a book in a while. A little embarrassing to admit. But I say that where I think my reading speed isn't as fast as it used to be. So I'm hoping I can get these down to about an hour by the end of this video. Because at this rate, well, it's 19 books. So you know, as for this book, obviously not my first time reading it. I imagine most of you watching this video now have also read this book. I mean, you know, over 275 million copies sold. One could say it's a classic. And I'm gonna be honest, it's a lot funnier than I remember it being. And also, Greg Heffley is so much more of a prick than I remember him being. There's a theory out there that he's a psychopath. I remember seeing a couple of videos about it, but that was after I was reading the books. And I was like, yeah, I guess I could check out. I think Jeff Kinney has publicly said that that's not meant to be the case, but you know what? Reading this, I disagree. This guy is a problem. The way he treats Rowley is not okay. In fact, not just Rowley, Greg's just a prick to everyone around him. The bit where he's like in the tree costume and then just starts pegging. Whoa. I mean, as it's throwing, he just starts ripping apples at the main character of the play. You know, the girl was playing Dorothy. Gets the other two trees involved at that. Breaks her glasses, which implies that there's a headshot involved, at least one, and creates such a scene that the whole production has to get cancelled. All because she wouldn't let him cheat on a test. What? This wimpy kid did that. Insane. Look, this is the book that starts it all. You meet Greg, you meet Roderick, you meet Manny, you meet the mum, you meet the dad, you meet Rowley, you meet Freely. There's the cheese touch. There's Greg trying to abuse safety patrol powers. There's the aforementioned play where he performs assault. He breaks Rowley's arm. He and Rowley almost get in a fight. Then they get jumped by teenagers and he has to then eat the cheese touch cheese. Ugh. Genuinely, if you haven't read this book, I don't know why you're watching this video. Like, I appreciate it. I'm just a little confused. I don't think there's a ton more that I can say, but you probably haven't heard already. So let's just move on to the next book. Alright, we just finished Roderick Rules. My opinion that Greg is inherently a bad person is reinforced, but I'm also going to expand that just a terrible family. Roderick is, how do you even explain that guy? The mum might be a narcissist, just consistently just enforcing herself on every situation and making it about her opinion. Manny, he's only 4 or 3, a toddler, but already it just seems like quite the little menace. One can't help but wonder that Greg might be exaggerating his acts. I can't imagine he's too far off because the dad as well seems like a real piece of work. Although I say that, I do feel a little bad for him. I think he's the most normal person in his entire family, and overall this seems like the most exhausting group of people to be around. But there's a point in this book where they're at a talent show and he's a kid with like piercings on stage. There's a point where the dad, Frank, my fault. He leans over to the person in front of him and talks about the kid with piercings and goes, hey, what's the worst thing that kid could say to you? Hi, Dad. Which already, just such a pricky thing to do. I get having an opinion, but like, why would you do that? But then of course, the person he says it to is the kid's dad. I forgot about that bit. that made me cackle a lot. Reading these books back to back, and you know, I'm about to do 17 more of them. It's a little emotionally draining, I won't lie. Like, these people just kind of suck. Like, there was a point where I was like, well, maybe like that's like Jess Kinney's thing. He just like writes characters to be like the most exaggerated, awful versions of themselves. But Rowley's a perfectly fine person. I have no beef with Rowley. And it was a point at the start where there's some kids were being a bit ruthless with some bullying, like, and I was like, oh, true, okay, here it is. Here's the evidence that it's everyone. It's not just the Heffleys, you know, other kids are monsters too. But then it gets revealed that Greg started the joke that they're all a part of, so you know. Some people say that this is the best book. I don't think I agree. It's perfectly fine, but it's really just an expansion of the first book, which is what it was written to be. And I don't really think the first book's the best one. So you catch my drift. Greg is just as narcissistic and psychotic as he is in the first one. And you start to see that you might get it from Roderick, who would have thought. As we discussed, terrible family. Greg's grandmother also has a note that he wrote to her as a child that says, I hate you, grandma, framed on her wall. Interesting way to deal with it. Greg has a pen pal that he's being mean to for some reason. I am enjoying these. Like, this is a fun experience, but I am a little concerned about how I'm gonna feel after I read another 17 of these. I guess we'll keep going. I guess. Okay, I've just shotgunned 3 of these books really quickly. Bit of a mental load. I've just spent a lot of time with the Heffleys. However, I will say, although I understand the first book and the second book are iconic and I did enjoy them, this is where I feel like the majority of my love for the series comes from, the nostalgia for it. There's also something to note that in the first 2 books, Greg is genuinely being a psychopath. Like, he's actually doing some unhinged stuff. Versus in these, he's more so just delusional. For example, in The Last Straw, the only major thing I remember him doing in this book that felt like objectively wrong is when he convinces Rowley to do a time capsule and put some of his like video games in it, and then later digs up the time capsule and uses the stuff for himself. That's pretty questionable, but otherwise he's just being a wimpy kid, which is why this is overall just a pretty good wimpy kid book. There's nothing too drastic about it. He's not nearly as psychotic, which is maybe a bit more tame, but when you're spending this much time with a character, it makes it a little bit easier, I think. That being said, the end of Dog Days is excruciating. Oh my god. He is like 3 back-to-back multiple major fumbles where he's just being, I don't even know what word to use there. The stuff of Heather Hills, grim. The whole fiasco of his dad in the baseball game. And then the trip with him and Rowley's family to the beach. Like, it's all a lot. It's a lot. And I do struggle with embarrassing characters on media. I don't know if it's an empathy thing or just because I relate too much to doing embarrassing stuff myself, but like, it makes my skin crawl, and I was kind of struggling at the end of this book. However, The Ugly Truth would be my favorite thus far. In my opinion, this is one of the more complete wimpy kid books. Jeff is truly in his groove, it's decently grounded, and there isn't a painful trip you have to read about that just makes you want to put the book down. Dog Days. Greg and Rowley aren't really mates, as they should be. If I'm Rowley, I do not want to be around Greg. If I'm Rowley's dad, Mr. Jefferson, I don't want to be around Greg. Much less my kid being around Greg. It's good to see that he actually has some consequences and has to watch Rowley hang out with a friend that his parents brought him, which sounds pretty dystopian now that I think about it. Even more dystopian and sad, Greg reacts to this by photoshopping himself into other people's memories to make it look like he's got an awesome life on social media. He also convinces himself that he's going to have an awesome year because he's got some cool kid in the year above him's old textbook. Sure, mate. Yeah. Susan also goes back to university to get her degree, which, you know what? Good for her. Sure. However, without her, the men of the house almost immediately lose the plot. So to react to this, they get a maid. However, since Susan's already self-conscious about getting a maid in the first place, she decides the most logical thing to do is deep clean the house before the person you're paying to clean it turns up. So they don't think they're needed, which is exactly what happens. I think the maid clocked what was going on and just immediately started taking advantage of the situation. Even when Greg tries to take advantage of the maid and have her do some of his chores, she just decides, no, I'm not gonna do that. Takes a leaf out of Roderick's book in a school of weaponized incompetence. Also takes some naps in Greg's bed, invites her friends over to watch TV, just doesn't do anything. They kick her out. It's kind of funny. There's also a subplot about the Peachy Breeze kid, which is a spokesperson for an ice cream flavor. Greg wants the job because, you know, he wants it to be his job to eat ice cream forever. This is his ticket to being famous. Hey, at least he's got a tangible ambition for once. However, I thought it was hilarious that Frank just hates it, just despises these ice cream ads so much that he writes letters to the brand about how much he hates it
and would never buy their product. Anyways, Greg doesn't get the part and immediately tries to sabotage the kid behind him because he's salty. The main topic of this book though is change, puberty, aging, responsibility, and Greg will also not shut up about girls. Something is clearly waking up at him, and knowing the type of guy he is, I'm personally a bit worried. And also there's a school lock-in, which the only time I ever remember doing that was in preschool. But the funniest thing that comes out of that is a photo game where you're meant to take a photo of a body part on someone, like a Polaroid, and try and hide it as best as possible so that other teams guess who's in the photo. Rowley's team barely tried, but it is what it is. Greg's team, however, takes a photo of someone's, this part of their arm, which the teachers decide looks like a butt crack. And so instead of explaining themselves, they just run. But the big event that ends this book is Uncle Gary's wedding. Uncle character being the character of Frank's younger brother, who's been married several times, seems to be a bit lacking in responsibility. You know the type. I remember reading this when I was a kid. The wedding doesn't go through. Well, it begins, but during the best man speech, he reveals that Gary didn't even want to marry his wife, or soon-to-be wife, his bride. I remember reading this as a kid and just being like, okay, what? Like, I need to know, was it Gary's plan for the mate to do that so that gets him out of the wedding? Because, surely it would have just been easier to not organize the wedding in the first place? Or did the mate just do that thinking it would be funny? Anyways, this book ends with Greg fantasizing about putting Rowley in a leash and collar, and I think that's enough said.
But yeah, The Ugly Truth, I think, has been the most enjoyable read thus far. My brain is definitely feeling a little overloaded at the moment, which is unfortunate because he's still 14. Well, books. The thing that really confused me though, in the first book, Greg talks about being in high school. Yet all of a sudden, in The Last Straw, he's in middle school. They changed it. It definitely hurts my headcanon a bit. But I always remembered these stories happening in a middle school, so reading the first book and seeing high school, I was like, what? It just makes me wonder how far into Greg's life we go. Like, what is Hot Mess really going to be about? But it's almost 2 a.m. I'm ready for bed, so I will see you in the morning for another big day of reading. Hoorah!
Oh, beautiful day for a book. Especially a book written for children as an adult. The goal today is to knock out 7 of these. But we can get through more than 7. I'm not against it. I remember I got this one for Christmas as a kid. I didn't normally get these for Christmas, but I'm hoping I'm gonna feel pretty nostalgic for this one. Anyways.
I've gone through another 4 of these books, and it was a lot. I really enjoyed Cabin Fever. I don't even think it was nostalgia. One of the funnier and maybe easier reads out of this series. The whole arc with Greg thinking he's on the run from the police is pretty humorous. He also just starts going genuinely insane and hard luck. I also thought this was a funny one.
No, but genuinely, you can see on this cover, there's an 8-ball, which represents the magic 8-ball that Greg finds in Roderick's bedroom, I think. These books kind of blend together, I won't lie to you. Point is that he finds this, toy and immediately trusts it with his whole life. Not even as a bit, he will fall for the ball if he needs to. Oh, I need to make a choice right now, but let's see what the magic ball thinks. So if it gets to a point where it gets yeeted over a fence, hits something, breaks, but then when Greg retrieves it, he finds a plastic Easter egg with a long-lost family relic in it, which is pretty lucky, I won't lie to you. But then immediately goes, oh yes, the sphere gave me this, oh, hail the sphere! Look, I wouldn't think anything of it if he wasn't acting genuinely psychotic in the first couple books. When you see him start exhibiting actual crazy person behavior, it's a little hard to ignore. I'm gonna be real.
Showing signs of more of the unhinged character he was at the start of his book. Third Wheel I also quite liked. The final act of the whole dance, then, Rowley stealing his girl. Well, not really his girl, but getting a girlfriend was a bit painful just because I struggle with that kind of comedy, storytelling. The sheer pace Greg is able to make a fool of himself at the end of his book is just a lot. But it's not nearly as much as compared to The Long Haul. This is very similar to the end of Dog Days, which I talked about, except it's a million times worse. But I really just don't like it when stories are just, this went wrong, now this went wrong, and then this went wrong, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. It's just a bit stressful, really. Hardly anything good happens in this book. It's just 200 and some change pages of things going wrong. However, this is also the last one that I had read before. Everything after this point is brand new to me, and I'm really hoping it's much more Cabin Fever than it is long haul. There's only one way to find out. I have to say, this was an excruciating read. First one where I didn't know what was going to happen, and I didn't like it until the last 4 pages.
Old School begins with Greg giving a spiel on his take of technology versus humanity, how we'll become more reliant to it over the years, and how he thinks it's a good thing because he doesn't like doing things himself. This is relevant because his mum is organising a town unplugged, where despite no one else in her family even remotely agreeing with her, she seeks to get 100 signatures from random people that she just approaches anywhere she is, so she can present it to the town hall so there can be a mandated event where I think it's just the neighbourhood at least, just disconnects from the internet for a whole 48 hours. Which right off the bat, terrible idea. You know, I'm in full support of going outside and reducing how much time you spend doom scrolling. I think those are healthy things to do. But taking away the main form of communication that people have nowadays just seems like a recipe for a disaster. And personally, I think they have enough going on already, considering that they still have the pig from the last book. Jeff has just ruined this pig to become the smartest pig that he's ever been, to the point where it's effectively acting like a little toddler with the freedom of a cat. And look, these books do get more cartoony the further into it we get, and so I kind of wish that he just ran with it, because it keeps being like, oh, I mean the pig did this, which is crazy because it doesn't even have thumbs. Yeah, we know, Jeff, none of this makes sense. Why even acknowledge it at this point? Anyways, that's not the only new addition to the Gregley household, because the granddad has to move out of Leisure Towers for rent reasons and moves into the Heffley household, where for some reason the mum lets him choose any room in the house, and with that picks Greg's room, which by itself is a bit messed up. I feel like there's a nicer way to go about that. But it gets even more crazy when it's revealed that they also have a guest room, which is currently like solely being used for the pig. This family makes no sense. Anyway, so the granddad moves in and immediately starts being a judgy little prick himself, because, you know, it runs in the family, picking apart every little mishap that the kids have, which, hey, let's just remind ourselves, he's couch surfing in his retirement years. With all due respect, which isn't much, you have no room to speak on anything. Do we know his name? I wish we knew his name. He also like throws an accidental party because he becomes a weapon on online dating. I'm telling you, worst family in media history. How this is relevant because it's somehow causing a lot of tension between Greg and his dad. In the meantime, Roderick gets a job, and for some reason they decide to camp out in his break room to show support. Greg also gets accused of taking an inappropriate photo of a woman. You know, at a point, he seems to always accidentally be in like perverse situations. Starting to wonder that the diary aspect of this is starting to cloud the truth a bit, Gregory. Greg also joins the buddy system, where he effectively becomes a role model for a younger student, which worst person for the role. How did he ever get acceptance of that? Surely the teachers know who he is at this stage. Luckily, the kid he signed through doesn't need a role model because he's a little super genius, and so Greg obviously starts exploiting him immediately. And then while this is going on, due to the fallout of the situation with the party, Frank, the dad, gets a webcam to spy on everyone, make sure he's not misbehaving, which causes Greg's slide to insanity to progress, causing him to freak out about random objects in the house because they might have cameras in them, he might be being watched, and might be spying on him. Sounds like a perfectly healthy, sane person, I don't know. Makes you wonder if it's this bad in middle school, how bad it's gonna be once he has to say college, but that's not my commentary to make. And eventually Susan, the mum, gets enough signatures where this great unplug can happen, which also becomes like a community cleanup situation where it gets controlled by the Girl Scouts, and Greg runs away with Fru, the little 5-year-old he's looking after. And also someone that's currently on community service, aka a felon. A teenager runs away with a child and a felon. You know, just a great crew to have for the situation. Anyways, they eventually get caught because, guess what? Susan didn't unplug, because why would the rules apply to her? She does this by using a GPS that she planted on Greg that he didn't know about. Anyways, Greg also tries to become a plumber for some reason, causing the roof to soak through. And so the granddad finally decides to be useful and gives him a ride into town to try, you know, find some supplies to fix the mistake. Anyways, long story short, they end up in a car crash, and it's more Greg's fault than it should be. And so, you know, as we mentioned before, tensions are rising with his dad, so to, you know, escape him, he last minute signs up for a school camp. When he gets to the camp, he's warned about someone called See Last Scratch, but whatever, however you pronounce this, I have no idea. Who's a scary legend that supposedly hides in the woods, has claws for hands, and he'll get you if you go walking at night. He'll freaking get you. He's got a scary hut he'll take you back to, and it's a scary camp story. What else do you want? Rowley's dad's a chaperone for his cabin. Poor bloke. There's some poison ivy here. Rowley gets a tooth stuck in his hair. There's a fish in the toilet. You know, stuff happens. Anyways, eventually Mr. Jefferson has to leave, and they have to bring in an emergency chaperone. Guess who it is? Eventually Greg's like walking out in the forest by himself, and he finds the hut. He finds Silas's scratch hut. And so logically, he walks in where he finds is actually a really well-maintained bathroom, which is hype because that's the only one on site. The entire camp just run down as hell, but this bathroom, it's primo. However, unfortunately for Greg Heffley, he's not alone in this cabin. He hears the sound of whistling. Oh no, is it Silas Scratch? He turns to run and bumps into Frank Heffley. It's his dad. His dad was Silas Scratch the whole time. Personally, I didn't see it coming, but like I feel like I should have. Anyways, eventually they leave the camp and then the dad goes, hey, you want to ride back with me? And it feels like they're on a better foot. Which I thought was a really cute way to end this book. I feel like you don't normally get a twist in these. So that was enjoyable. I've got a decent feeling from the end of it, but you know, up until that point, I was struggling. Oh my god. Long haul straight into that was just a lot, and the next one's called Double Down. So I'm not exactly optimistic about the next stage of his books, but we'll get into it, I guess. Thankfully, Double Down is a much more enjoyable read. I would say it's a far more classic Wimpy kid book. Lots of little funny moments, not a really strong plot overall. Also, I think the granddad must die because we don't see him again in this and he didn't move out by the end of the last book. I think. So, RIP, I guess. The pig also just runs away at a point as well, which I don't really know what the point of the pig was. I can't really think of any plot that it developed or any payoff it had. It was just a little nuisance. It was like a second Manny, and I'll be the first to tell you that one Manny is plenty, Jeff. Someone tries to restart the cheese touch, which is funny. I guess it's by this cheese font on the front pack cover. It's not really relevant apart from that. Yeah, I don't have a ton to say about this one, but I also didn't hate it. It kind of fits into the same kind of category as Ugly Truth, where there's nothing too insane about it, but it's just a good example of what the series should be. I've read so much Wimpy Kid. Okay. So we're up to book number 12, and obviously that is a number 13. Why didn't I buy number 12? Well, don't jump to conclusions, mate, because I did. I feel these books are from my actual childhood, as you can see the difference in paper color. But I brought the rest of them in 2 different orders. One from Paper Plus, one from Mighty 8, depends which one is cheap on what website. And I got number 12 to Getaway from Mighty 8. And when the books got here, I was like, wait, I'm missing one. How did I miss one? I checked my order. It's in a different shipment to get here in June. It's currently May. And I want this video done in real time. I want it done in the next 3 days. I then checked to buy it elsewhere. It's out of stock effectively everywhere. And here's the thing. These books are so easily accessible. They are in every bookstore. But number 12 is always sold out. And it's definitely not because it's the most recent one. There's 7 afterwards that are in stock around it. So my suspicion is that it's either really good that everyone just buys it out the second it's available, or it undersells so much that no one's purchased it. So we're gonna read it on my laptop and see what the hype is about. Already, I can tell this is gonna be a worse reading experience because it's on a screen and not a book, but I will try my best not to hold that against it. You know what? That was actually pretty good. I think it lived up to the hype. Is it the best one? No, it's not the best one, Adam. Chill out. I think I was just really relieved when I finished this book that I liked it at all, because it is a vacation book. It's a trip book, which I think we know at this stage I don't like. But I feel like this is what the long haul should have felt like. Instead of it just being like an ever-piling pile of bad things that just get stressful to read at a point, it's more so just riffing on the idea of traveling in general and playing off like the cliches that pop up, which is definitely an entertaining read. It was a little funny that we didn't get off the plane until like page 70, and this is a 200-page book. Also, Greg sounds like the most annoying passenger of all time. I mean, shocker, who would have thought? But there is still a very cartoony ending to this book. Like, things escalate to a point where it's not really believable that a family did that and got away with it, even if they got plastered on the website afterwards. There's also a point where Manny manages to put a box jellyfish in a bucket by himself. A toddler, and the fact that it's even there closes the pool down. I can't really fathom how he pulled that off. Also, Roderick gets a misses and gets cheered on within like 20 pages. It's brutal. Turns out Nice Guys finished last, and the Dickheads too. Overall, this is just a fun story. It's what I think these trip books should aspire to be. That being said, I don't want any more. I think this is more of a fluke than Jeff Kinney figuring it out. I'm just getting that vibe. But don't get me wrong, I like this book. It was a fun read. I do recommend it. God, this lighting is horrendous. I am so sorry. I'm really glad I liked that. I was so nervous I was going to get disappointed. Jeez. All right. I think I'm going to leave it there for tonight. It's just turned 1 a.m. As I said, I've read 7 of these books today. There's the pile. I think it's going to be a shower, then bed, and then tomorrow we're gonna knock out the rest of these. And considering how good that last one was, I have higher hopes for some of these. Good night. I will see you tomorrow.
Okay. So this is starting to affect my brain. I can only think in Wimpy Kid panels. I'm not going to be so dramatic and say I had a dream about it, but when I think about doing anything and I think about doing it in my brain, I see it as Greg Heffley. Oh my god, 7 books left. 7 books left with this silly family. It's alright, we can do it. It's fine. It's fine. I'm going to go for a run first, but it's fine.
Oh my god. There we go. It's a cold and miserable day. I'll be real with you. Run side. Terrible. Bad time. I also finished this coffee already. I'm not sure why I'm pretending. But it's a nice, great day to read some books, in my opinion. So... the meltdown was really good. Thoroughly enjoyed this one. I feel like this is low-key the most creative Jeff has been in any of his books. Basically, this book builds up multiple factions in Greg's neighborhood. There's the Upper Hill kids, the Lower Hill kids, the like safety patrol, and the like clan that lives in the woods that they don't really address what's going on there. But it shows why these sides all have like tensions with each other, and like it's like kid politics, which I find really enjoyable, really amusing. I read a book when I was a kid called The Big Splash that was like a mafia story set in a school. Obviously there are like social politics at play when you're a kid, but seeing them exaggerated and like put into conflict that represents like actual organizations. Do you get what I'm saying? This becomes a war story, but it's like believable kid factions. Eventually the school has a shutdown because there's so much snow, and just the biggest snowball fight of all time takes place. There's like genuine strategy, betrayal, counterattacks, defenses. It was like reading a Battlefront book. There's even this awesome double-page spread of just a war zone, but it's snow. I found this such a breath of fresh air. The whole concept is funny and entertaining. Jeff, you cooked on this one. A gem, a genuine gem. So stoked by it. I grew up in Taranaki, and I think we got maybe 2 snow days in my entire childhood, and one of them fell on a school day. And I remember we had this double playground fort at Tututu School, shout out. And I just never this massive snow fight played out on it. But I could totally see dynamics that are in this book playing out in that situation, which is why it feels grounded to me. Maybe I'm just crazy because I've read 13 of these, but I like this one a lot. There's also a kid dabbing in it, so you know. 5 stars. You know what? After finishing 15 of these books, I know a little something about going off the deep end. This didn't end the way I thought it was going to. In bad news, my reading of his books has slowed down dramatically. They're starting to blend together a bit, but we have 3 left, so I just need to lock in, alright? This is not the book I need to read after getting tired of them. I really hope this goes somewhere. This was so many books to read back to back to back to back. I'll be honest with you, this is where I like really felt it. And unfortunately, despite Meltdown being really good, the quality didn't maintain itself. It's not like a massive fall off. Like all 4 of these are better than The Long Haul, but you can tell that Jeff is like stretching this series to its limits, you know? For example, Wrecking Ball. It's about home improvements. Isn't that great for a kid's book? Family member dies, there's will, they're gonna expand the house, everything that could go wrong does go wrong. It's been an absolute finish alert for me. Here's a funny bit where Frank like forces Greg to go out and be helpful to the builders, you know, an untrained, skinny little preteen. Yeah, he's gonna be real helpful in this situation. The site needs more people like him. And like, you know, the tradies effectively just mess with him. Other than that, I'm really struggling to remember what else happens in this book. Greg almost dies on a roof. Anyways, The Deep End is a trip book. It's definitely better than Long Haul. It's not as good as The Getaway. It is just exhausting because there's still a lot of the whole like everything going wrong kind of play, and it's like a bulk of the book. And like the whole conclusion is so cartoony and crazy. Honestly, if you're lucky that they survived, I'm not though. Yeah, you know what? The more I skim through this book again and like remember it, it's not very good. The Heffleys do not make for good vacation partners. They just don't. They're not good travel buddies. Awful hangs. That, and also Jeff Kinney's just a bit sadistic and likes watching this family suffer. It's called the Deep End for a reason. There is a little bit of warfare between a group of campers that Greg becomes friends with and like some teenagers on the hill, which was kind of cool, but like it's not as good as the Meltdown, so why would we even bothering? Diaper Overload is awesome if you're a Roderick fan. I'm not a Roderick fan. Roderick and the loaded diaper kind of like subplot is charming in the background in my opinion. But this is a book that's completely about it. And also, it's a diary of a wimpy kid, but Greg's barely in the first half, which means you're going off what Roderick told him, which doesn't make sense because there's also so many embarrassing details. It's like, why would he tell you that? Why would Roderick tell you that, Greg? So maybe he's just, capping, which isn't new to him. Whenever at the start of the third wheel where he tries to convince you that he remembers his memories in the womb. This guy lies all the time. So why do I believe anything? I said I hoped it went somewhere, and it kind of goes somewhere. There's like a reunion of Roderick's favorite band that happens to be in his town and happens to go to his Battle of Bands contest and happens to like, it's just not very believable. I think that's my problem with it. I just don't believe it for a single second. It's all so ridiculous, and I don't care about the band. I didn't like this one. Big Shot is the sports book, and considering he's a wimpy kid, and like by the way, he's so much more wimpy than I remember him being. Like reading these books, like I cannot stand this guy. He was just like, he barely tries, and it's like he's always running out of energy. Anyways, there's a funny moment in this book where he's like a school sports day, and then the teachers start trading kids between classes like NBA teams. I thought that was quite funny. Overall, this book's actually pretty decent, It's a good variation of the wimpy kid formula. I think it plays. It ends with Greg's basketball team, who's like terrible, the worst, getting sent to a tournament where all the losers go. It was Susan's idea, believe it or not. And they make it to the final, which doesn't mean that they won lots of games. It means they lost lots of games to get there, because like you play until you win and then you can go home, which means if you make it to the final and you lose that one, then you really are the biggest losers. And then Greg gets like put on the other team due to some injuries and scores the game-winning shot against his team. Probably the most athletic thing that kid's done. Definitely not the weakest book by any means out of this collection. I am going to rank these at the end, so I'm kind of not really sure where I'll put this one. I have to figure that out. Also, for some reason, my copy was localized with an Australian flag. I live in New Zealand. -5 points. The last book in this big chunk was No Brainer, which, as you maybe guessed from the title, the premise of this book is that everyone's an idiot. And if you watch the time lapse, you see me figure that out right about here. Yeah, this book is painful. Oh my god. Everyone is stupid. Everyone's already a bit stupid in the series, but they're even more stupid in this book. I don't think a single person makes a correct decision. Greg almost gets a girlfriend and that gets ruined by low intelligence as well. It's not that bad. Like, I'm being dramatic, but like, after reading 18, this is book 18. This is book 18. This should be book 9 maybe. But when it's book 18 and you read this all back to back and you get to the one where everyone's just stupid, it makes you feel like you're losing your goddamn mind. There is a point where like the school is like running out of money and they have to start selling sponsorship, like ad spots in the school, which I'm pretty sure is like against so many regulations. I did think it was funny and like a bit creative, like how many different ads they could come up with and figure out like what they would look like if a school had all access to ads. A bit dystopian as well, but it's a family's book, low-key. You also find out like a lot more lore about the school, like about the founder who went to jail, and then Greg almost ended up dating the like founder's granddaughter, so like he's making moves. Overall, I think I would say this is a decently solid wimpy kid book, but it hurts itself by being this late in the series. Because even if you're reading these as kids, by the time you get to this one, you're probably grown, you're probably aged a bit, and it just isn't gonna hit the same. Versus if this came out like after The Last Straw, it would be different in my opinion. Anyways, after reading this book, I could not be bothered reading the last one. I really didn't want to. But I also really wanted to be able to say in the thumbnail, but I did this in 3 days. So you gotta do what you gotta do. Hot mess. That feels fitting. The 19th book and the last one I will be reading in this video. What's this one even about? The pressure is building for Greg Heffley, who discovers when you mix heaps of family a tiny beach house. No, do they go on a trip in this? Oh, they're so gonna go on a trip in this. Fuck. Done. 19 books. Was this one good? No. I actually don't know. I really don't know. I'm going to make that decision in the morning. I need to go to sleep now. It is... I'm actually not going to tell what time it is because my parents will get mad at me.
Alright, good night.
The hot mess. He's in some meatballs. I beat the balls. So they go on a trip in this one. Yay! There's a lot of family dynamics. It's painful. There's also a whole arc in this where Greg's auntie has like an Instagram famous dog that's like a famous influencer. And it's like making fun of that whole kind of, you know, shtick. And you know, as someone who's only putting themselves through this for the sake of, you know, a YouTube video, I did not find it funny. They also all go on this trip to take a specific photo for the grandma who doesn't come on the trip for some reason. And there's also this like underlying thing that she's the head of her family because she makes really good meatballs. Only to find out by the end of the book that the meatballs are just like purchased from a restaurant, which is probably the most Heffley thing that could have happened in this book. You also see a photo album where there's clearly lots of boyfriends that have been brought on this beach trip in the past and had been cut out because the relationships had ended. And there's some rising tension between the mum and one of her sisters about one of these said boyfriends. And look, I caught it at the start, like immediately, like I understand how Jeff writes his books now. I saw this going a mile away, but at the end of the book, you find out that the boyfriend that they're arguing about is Frank Heffley. Which, you know what? If you were like 14 reading this, that's probably quite a fun twist. Maybe. I don't know. I will say that the illustrations feel like a higher quality. I think there's way more life. And look, there's far worse books in the series, but there's also far better. Not the strongest note they could have ended on, but the important bit is that it ended. I don't have to read another one of his books. Yeah, I know he's a spin-off series. Get 10,000 likes in the video, maybe we'll talk about it. Oh yeah, that's right. They fight another family. I forgot about that. The police get called. This family, man, they're exhausted to be around. And you know, and with that, I kind of want to stop talking about them. That's hot mess. But I do want to rank these. I do want to figure out which one I like the most, which I have a vague idea, and you probably do too, but let's do it. Okay, so I've now edited the majority of this video, excuse the stubble. So I've had a bit more time to sit with these books and decide how I feel about them. And ranking them was significantly harder than I was initially thinking it was going to be, as it always is. I'm looking at the list now, and I know some of you are going to disagree. There's a couple in here that I'm like, this might be controversial. I'm not going to try and yap too much about any of them because again, he's 19. So if I spend even like a minute, it's another 20 minutes on this video. So let's just get into it. At the bottom of the list, we have The Long Haul. This book is bad. This book is genuinely bad, and I am absolutely never going to watch the movie. Next, we have Diaper Overload. Already we get to a point where I would say this isn't a bad book. It just wasn't for me, but I could totally see it having its fans. Next is The Deep End. It's another trip book. It's significantly better than The Long Haul, but it's still a trip book. It is what it is. Next we have Wrecking Ball. This has the nicest moment in the whole series when you think the Heffleys are going to move out of their house and Greg and Rowley have like an emotional like making up kind of moment. It's really cute. It made me go aww when I read it. Otherwise, it's one of the weaker entries. Next is The Third Wheel. The start of this book is just a pretty decent Wimpy Kid book, but the ending is so painful and just a bit cringy. Next is Old School. The ending made this book a bit more satisfying, but like the plot's just painful. I think this is one of the books where the characters, especially the mum, are just at their most annoying. Next, and this is what I'm nervous about, next is Dog Days. I know a lot of people love this book. It just isn't for me. It's the first trip book. It doesn't gel with me. I can't defend myself. I know you disagree, so we'll move on. After that is Double Down. This is just such a bog standard decent Wimpy Kid book, and it's not the only one in the series that's like that, but it's the weakest one of those, I think. After that is Hot Mess. I was really harsh on this book when I first read it because, you know, I had read a lot up to that stage. There's some fun ideas in it, especially if you hadn't read one of these for like a year before you read this one. I think it's a lot better. After that is No Brainer. Another decently standard Wimpy Kid book, but there is some entertaining stuff in it. And as I was saying, if it was earlier in this series, I think I would have liked it more. And so accounting for all of that, it sits about here. After that, we have Big Shot. This is one of the more unique books. It's very Disney Channel movie-ish, I feel. An overall decently entertaining plot. No one's too annoying in it. Maybe Susan, but like that's just par for the course. I do feel bad for Preet though, the star player on Greg's basketball team that gets injured. He's one of the more unlucky characters in this book. Him and like Mr. Jefferson. After Big Shot, I have The Getaway. I don't have my physical copy yet. After that is Roderick Rules. I don't really have much to say. I feel like I haven't talked a lot about Roderick in this video. I do find him a fun character, but you really have to find him as being a problem all the time to be funny. Versus I feel like, Greg overreacts to situations and his humor in that. Versus Roderick is just like a force of chaos at all times. I have a hunch that most people who have this book as their favorite haven't read the rest. That's just my opinion. After that, we have the OG. Jeff hit the ground running with this book. However, he just got better as time went on. Like with The Last Straw. which this might be another controversial take. I think this is the best out of the original trilogy. The dynamic between Greg and his dad, just the situations they explore at the school. I think this is just the funniest, most entertaining book out of those first three. After that, we have Hard Luck. I think this is the one where Greg's acting the most like an actual crazy person, which is funny. Just a very solid Wimpy Kid book. And I just think it's a good read. And from what I've seen from other people's rankings, I think this one's just underrated. Now we have my top three. At the third podium position, we have The Ugly Truth. Just a very, very solid Wimpy Kid book. I'm pretty sure this is the book that convinced me that I really did enjoy this series as a kid. Next, we have Cabin Fever. Although Ugly Truth is what brought me into this series properly, this is what cemented it. It's a very solid Wimpy Kid book with some unique situations in it. Also, this is also the book that made me realize that I just can't stand Manny. Bro really diverted all power in the house to his room so his family members could freeze to death or he could just chill out and be fine. What an evil little child. So number one, I have The Meltdown. In my opinion, this is just the most entertaining book. I feel like I'm sounding like someone that really likes violence. That's not why I love this book. It has a compelling story. I really wish I read this one as a kid. I think it would have lit my imagination on fire. But I enjoyed reading it as an adult nonetheless. So yeah, that's my ranking. Was this a bit of a chore to get through by the end? Yeah, it was. The Heffleys aren't fun to spend extended amounts of time with. But overall, I can totally see why this is the fourth best-selling series of all time. It's not like they're the finest examples of literature, but there's a lot of people in this world who enjoy reading because of these books. And I think that's something worth acknowledging. And also, the quality doesn't drop off too much through, 19 books, and a 20th one's coming out this year. Some of the ideas get a bit drawn out and stale, and, they do get more cartoony, but I don't feel like they get dramatically worse. And that's an impressive feat. There is some on-the-nose meme references in the end, which, it is what it is. And it is a little lame that he never leaves middle school. But I don't think this is a series that's overstayed its welcome. I think it's still providing what it needs to provide. Also, they all have the same amount of pages. That's decently impressive. But hey, that's my video. Thank you so much for watching. It was a long one, I know. If you did enjoy, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I think we're getting close to like 16K when I'm recording this. So if you want to help get me there, I'd much appreciate it. Although if you're a Dog Days fan, I get if you don't. Anyway, stay hydrated, stay healthy and warm. It's important. Learn to not be like Greg when you can. And I'll catch you later. Bye.